Yeah, hi, all good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, man, you sound good, clear.
Awesome.
Well, dude, thanks for coming up. I had this little tweet here written up, so I'll just give you a quick intro. We talked about you a bit before you came on, but first and foremost, you've been crushing on Twitter recently. A lot of your takes have been getting picked up nicely. People really liking what you have to say. I'm seeing a lot about ICM. I'm seeing a lot about x402. Just like you're kind of right in the heart of just the pulse of what's going on in crypto Twitter right now. So, um, Yash is obviously on the SendAI team. They're doing really great work over there for Solana, just pushing the AI narrative forward, which is another reason it's perfect timing to have you on just to talk about what AI is doing right now in this x402 meta. But I'll give some credit to Lord Faith because he made a pretty good write up here just earlier today. He said, big ups to the man behind SendAI and also Solana Maxi Yash. I came across Yash's page recently. And I'm impressed about what he's building. Let me tell you a little bit about SendAI. SendAI is the AI development lab and community dedicated to the Solana ecosystem with a vision to scale Solana AI by 100x. SendAI provides a Solana agent kit, which is an open source toolkit designed to integrate AI agents with the Solana blockchain. They also host hackathons, Solana AI hackathons for Solana builders. The main focus is to bridge AI agents, software bots, automation, etc., into the Solana blockchain layer, presumably to leverage Solana speed, smart contracts, infra, decentralized futures. If you're building on Solana, build with Send AI. So that's a little right up there. But Yash, how are you doing today, man? We're glad to get you on.
Yeah, I'm doing all good, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I guess just we'll start there. How you got into crypto, how you got into AI mainly, and why you're building on Solana.
Sure. So I got in crypto back in end of 2021. So at the peak of the peak of the crypto mania in 2021, I entered the Solana ecosystem, and my entry was mostly via Super Team. So like I was one of the first early members of Super Team, and that time Super Team was a very I would say small community where it was focusing on the talent layer of the Solana ecosystem. And in Super Team, I used to contribute to a lot of bounties and a lot of projects here and there. And that's why I got Solana build and also crypto build. And then like fast forward to 2024, we started this project called SendCoin, which was again like a spontaneous decision. We didn't think much. We just launched a token, and that's why like Send is one of the OG ICM projects because we fair launched on Meteora at 500 KFDV, and till then like since then like we have been maintaining that token. And for AI, it was mostly during the last AI mania. I also got AI build, and we hosted the Solana AI hackathon, and that's how SendAI was also born. So yeah, that was my entry into AI. Like I've been previously interested in AI from a very long time, but I would say like that was one of my entry points where I. I got the strong confidence that I need to build in crypto cross AI. So I would say Solana AI hackathon was that moment that while hosting I realized that okay, this is where I actually want to spend my 3 to 5 years or even a decade going forward.
Well, since AI interests you so much, firstly, do you have a developer background? Because you're part of these super teams. You said you're an OG super team member. So I guess first and foremost, is your background in development?
No, I'm not a developer. So in Super Team as well as like while working with Solana Foundation, etc. Like I've been mostly on the research side of the things. So earlier I used to focus more on stablecoins and real world assets as the research sector, and then I also covered like a lot of different research areas in Solana. But mostly I've been an ecosystem researcher before becoming a founder myself. But yeah, I have a very talented technical team. So yeah, they do all the development, and I just like I'm involved day to day with all the things on how it should be developed and so on.
Cool. And what do you think the reason that AI what do you think the reason is that AI should be built on top of Solana? Do you think Solana and crypto and AI in general just go really well hand in hand together, or do you think they should remain separate? Obviously, I think I know your take, but curious.
Yeah, I think in general, like be it any blockchain or Solana, blockchain solves the important problem of verifiability, and another is the economic layer. So I think the immediate problem to solve here is the economic layer. That is, how do you enable AI agents to make payments, or how do you enable them to trade on your behalf? So I think every AI agent, sooner or the later, would require a wallet, and when they require a wallet, they would want to trade for you, send payments for you, and so on. I think like x402 is also an example where we are saying that okay, like every API call can be a payment in itself. So similarly. I think every agent would require an economic layer, and blockchains or Solana gives that economic layer. And Solana as a blockchain, particularly, I think the major benefit is the liquidity and the ecosystem benefits that it brings to the table. So I think that's like a major reason why AI should be on Solana. And then the second, or I would say the most critical part, would be the verifiability part. I think right now that's not a big problem, but later on, like how do you verify that an LLM is giving you the right output or the not, based on the current input? So I would say that is still a very difficult problem to solve. For example, verifiability of LLMs. Then another would be like privacy of LLMs. How do you ensure that LLMs are completely private, or whatever you are chatting is encrypted in some form and not going for like any sorts of training and so on. So I think like that would be another big area of focus like later on. And in general, I would say if AI agents become economic actors, they would require their own uh, token, or basically their own economy, and that's how like they would be coordinating among different AI agents. So I think coordination layer is a very important thing, and I would say in general, uh, crypto or Solana solves the most important part of markets and pricing. That everything has a market and everything has a price. And in general, like AI agents wouldn't like to have everything based on a fixed price or anything. They would like to have everything dynamic pricing, and they can easily calculate whatever prices they are. And let's say if you just tell an agent to do a work, it will try to find the most optimal part to do that using different pricing mechanisms. So I think in general, Solana is a really great platform for building any sorts of markets, and internet capital market is one sort of I would say niche for that. So yeah, Solana in general would be a very good way for agents to create markets and also access this market where everything would have a dynamic pricing and everything would have markets on on Solana or any other blockchain as well. So I think that's the reason that AI should be on Solana or on blockchain, just because of markets, verifiability, and also that they're providing that economic layer for AI agents to act upon.
So you think every agent should have their own token?
Not every AI agent should have a token. Of course, like AI agents are also economically incentivized to have their own token, because having a token helps you bootstrap capital. Even for Send, when we launched a token, we didn't have a lot of vision at that time, but we just like went ahead, launched a token, and of course, like early days, it was like pretty much rough, but over time, like we got our vision together, and yeah, even in the AI meta, we did decently well. So I would say, in general, tokens helps you bootstrap capital. As simple as that. And another important factor is attention. So I would say every agent doesn't need to have a token, particularly any utility-based agent doesn't need to have a token. If agents are designed to be economic actors, I would say then they need to have a token that they can bootstrap capital and attention, build a treasury, and then act upon the treasury they have built. Otherwise, like they can just like have any sorts of tokens like USDC Sol and be fine with it. But I would say if someone doesn't have a purpose for a token, like neither bootstrapping capital nor attention or any sorts of thing, then I think like that token isn't needed, and you can simply use USDC and or Sol for that.
To kind of pivot a little bit, and I appreciate your answer and thoughts there. I think it's interesting, and I want to get back to this x402 meta in a second here. But you made this interesting tweet, and I'll pull it up here. You said um, narrative cryptos versus usable cryptos, and I read this whole thing. I think it's very interesting. You kind of talk about the relationship between narrative-driven cryptos, where you kind of speculate on growth, rather than usable cryptos, which you actually use, and they kind of have an ecosystem built around them. I guess my question to you after reading this post would be, what do you think the next big narrative is for crypto? And maybe just give us a little bit of thought on this post as well.
Yeah, biasly, I would expect that to be AI narrative, because in the trenches of whatever groups I have been, like everyone is talking right now about the AI trades, and X402 is like a kind of a new narrative. I would say it's not a new thing, like it has been going on since March of this year. Like I remember like talking to Coinbase team back in March, April, and they were doing this, and they also released the white paper back in April, I think. So it has been a long thing, and like we have been also one of the contributors to the MCP side of the X402 thing. So I think it's a good meta, and in general, A16Z's report kind of fueled the meta. Like A16Z had a report where they said that it can be a $30 trillion market. Like if AI agents starts to pay each other, and X402 can be that payment standard. So I would say in general, X402 is a very simple thing, not a very complex thing, but a simple that you just like ingest payments in an API call. So that can be, I would say, or that is the current meta or the narrative. I don't know how long it would last, and well, since we don't have like a lot of teams building, to be honest, in X402, there are very few teams building in X402, and there's not much demand on the demand side of the thing. So I would say we need to still wait for the demand, but let's see how long it goes. Apart from that, I think AI meta is the obvious step, because in general, in entire tech, like AI is the number one hot thing right now, that everyone in Silicon Valley is talking about AI. Everyone wants to be an agents company, like any big tech company, or take any SaaS company as well. Everyone has now agents in the landing page. So I would say agents or AIs in general is would be or can be the next meta. But I would genuinely like the AI or agents not to be just a short-term meta, but kind of a longer-term meta. It may not be that violent as the last one, but just a longer-lasting meta would be really good, where you have different sorts of smaller sub-metas, like let's say X402, and then something else comes in. But longer the meta, like I would say, we would end up attracting much more talented teams, and that would end up strengthening the sector more and more.
So, what do you like? What are you even excited about for X402? Are you surprised that this meta has now kind of, is front and center? And then I'm also seeing, like ERC 8004. So we're already seeing some advancements to kind of keep attention, keep excitement around this narrative. Like, how are you looking at this? I think over the weekend, this just became a CT wide thing. So how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I think X402 is like as a protocol or as a standard, I really like it. But I'm not that surprised that it's a meta, because I was expecting this to be the meta, I would say 2, 3 months ago or much before. I was quite surprised at why no one is talking much about X402, or why there's no speculation yet. So it's pretty funny that, like, yeah, just a E16Z report kind of triggered that speculation. But yeah, X402 as a standard is great. I would say it's kind of overblown right now. For example, the total number of transaction volume ever is just like 1.3, $1.4 million, which is nothing. Like you can just like spam $5 transactions for lot of transactions, and you can make that volume up pretty easily. So I would say there is no real usage yet. And it's more of a, okay, like there's a lot of potential here. And if this works out, the entire web can look very different, where every button is like kind of a payment. So I would say it's like a really good standard and a really good protocol, and a lot of great teams are behind it. For example, Cloudflare is also supporting it, virtually supporting it, and then Coinbase is like rallying all the projects pretty well. So I would say it's a good standard, and everyone wants to get associated with it, but it still doesn't have a real usage. And that's something which can be developed over the upcoming months, and it would be a I would say slow growth, to be honest, because payments in general is very hard, that you have to bootstrap both the supply side and the demand side. If there's only supply side and no demand side, the whole market would crumble. So I would say X402 is more like a marketplace. You need to solve both the supply side. So in the supply side, it's like all the APIs which you can like pay per usage, and then on the demand side, it is that the users who want to pay per usage. So I would say like both side of the marketplace needs to be solved, otherwise the whole network effects would crumble. So if once both get solved sustainably, then we will see some real growth and real adoption. But I would say some big players need to adopt, so that the demand side is sorted. For example, I would assume a browser completely with X4, like completely X402 compatible would be really great. Where every website you just go, you can click a button, and you just go pass through the paywall via that browser. So I think like all these agentic browsers can be X402 compatible browsers, and that can be really an interesting way. Another rumor I've been hearing is that Cloudflare wants to now integrate X402 while deploying the websites. So let's say if you are deploying a website, you can just turn on X402, and whenever Cloudflare detects that it's not a human which is accessing things, but it is agent which is accessing this, or even a bot which it is accessing it, it will just charge them some dollars or anything. And Cloudflare also is announcing their own dollars. It's called net dollar, and there's a high possibility they charge this in net dollar. So I think that can be a really interesting thing, because Cloudflare has a very good market in the whole web space. So if they enforce that on the on the deployment itself, then like a lot of people would start adopting, because for any web deployers, it's kind of an extra revenue they get from bots and agents. And for bots and agents, now they need to have net dollar or any stablecoin which they would be supporting. Otherwise, like they can't access those sites. So I think that can be an interesting mechanism. And if Cloudflare kinds of implement that in their UI, where there's just a toggle you can turn on X402, I think that would end up rocketing the adoption a lot. But yeah, I would say still there is almost zero real adoption till now.
So kind of almost as though CT discovered this, A16Z kind of put the massive spotlight on it, and it just got overhyped, just like a lot of narratives happen. I guess the next thing is, um, you mentioned supply and demand side problems. So I'm just trying to think from, I'm trying to use your perspective as a builder, as a founder, as someone with a technical background, to kind of validate what part of this market is the best place to be from a sort of value generating standpoint, right? So it's not just, I guess, integration of X402 isn't enough. There has to be someone fundamentally building out the infrastructure to solve that supply demand side that you were talking about. Anybody that you're seeing right now solve that? Is there anyone in the space solving that problem right now?
Sure. I would say, like, before we enter that question, like, there's very important to understand different stakeholders involved in X402. So one is like the API sellers. So API sellers are anyone who is willing to sell APIs. It can be a first party seller, it can be a third party seller. So first party seller, for example, is like if I'm creating, like, selling my own data, then I am a first party seller. And if I'm not creating my own data, but I'm kind of creating a proxy API or a wrapper of another API, and then selling its third party APIs. So I would say in general, kind of in X402, most of the APIs are third party APIs, that they are taking like some API and then converting that into like proxy APIs. For example, there's a player on Solana called Corbits. What they are doing is like they are kind of converting Helios RPCs into all this like X402 compatible APIs. So that's like that's one part of the stack, that is the API sellers. And then there's like API consumers. This can be even normal people like us, or even other companies or other businesses. So API sellers kind of pay per API, and that's the whole protocol about that. You can pay per usage whenever you call an API. And then there's another player called facilitator. So the role of the facilitator here is to make sure that they facilitate the payment from seller to from buyer to seller. So let's say if I, as a buyer, I have a wallet and I make a payment, then it would go via a facilitator, because facilitator are like kind of a middleman. So you can think of also as like Visa, Mastercard, or any sorts of middlemen which exist in a payments layer. So so facilitator is something that currently accrues value. For example, most of the facilitator charge 0.25% or 0.1% just to make sure that they are able to bootstrap this ecosystem. And right now, the biggest facilitator is, of course, like Coinbase themselves. And then there are like 4, 5 ecosystem players, both on Base and Solana. And Base and Solana are the only two chains like which are kind of officially recognized in the X402. Of course, a lot of people have created their own X402 folks and added their chain, but these are the two main chains which are officially promoted and supported by X402. So I would say facilitator is something like which is accruing value, but the problem here is that most of the facilitators are almost offering at a zero fees. And in general, it's like kind of race to the bottom, that everyone wants to offer zero fees just to ensure that they get the adoption. And for example, Solana Foundation is also planning to release their own facilitator, and they would make it completely free and open source. So that kind of ends up killing the facilitator market itself, because no one would want to now pay 0.25% just to get the payments through. And facilitator is like more like a server which is just facilitating the payment. So right now I would say there's not much value of accrual in the entire X402 ecosystem, but my hunch is that all the interfaces would end up accruing the value. For example, if there's a browser which is integrating X402, or if someone like Cloudflare enforces on their interfaces, then they can start charging some fees for whatever payments they are facilitating. So I would say, in general, all the interfaces or the platforms would end up accruing the value. Or the APIs buyers and sellers are kind of like just like buying and selling, so they would obviously be one of the economic actors. But the value accrual would mainly come from interfaces who have some negotiating power and who can like take some cut in the payment process. So I would say interfaces would be the one who would accrue value, and those can also be the facilitator. And there's always an incentive for an interface to be the facilitator itself. So I would say all the current facilitator would kind of go out of the business, but all the interfaces would become the facilitator themselves, and they would end up earning revenues because they have that negotiating power to charge 0.05% or 10 bips, 5 bips, and so on.
So if the facilitators are kind of a race to the bottom in the sense that it's just going to be free at some point, you think that the interfaces will kind of take over to fill that gap and they'll be able to make some money. But at what point does it become not a race to the bottom for the interfaces as well?
Um, I think the attention, like interface always has that thing where they can charge whatever they want if they have the attention or the stickiness. For example, Exam charges 1% to the people, and people happily pay just because
Yeah.
it has a very good chart, and in general, it's a very good terminal. So I would say as long as you have the attention or the utility, or that people are sticking to your platform. For example, if Chrome comes and says that okay, like the whole browser is X402 compatible and will charge 5 bips on any payments you make, then no one would have an option but to pay that, because you won't be switching to any other browser just because of 0% fees. So I would say everyone would be fine with paying some fee as a convenience thing. And that's why I believe that it's not that and that's also the reason that there won't be any winner in the X402 race right now. All the winners would come in the second wave, or after this speculation wave has been ended, and then the real adoption comes. Because if you own the interface, you can charge whatever you want to your users, and user would be happy paying that. And even the sellers won't mind paying any fees to the interfaces if they are able to give them some traffic. So I would say at the end, it's entirely like ads network. Whosoever has the attention would get the most out of it.
So you mentioned attention versus utility, and I'm kind of actually going to pivot on that note too, because um, right now in the state of ICM, the state of launchpads, we actually kind of have a discussion: attention versus utility. Right? You have Pump Fund, where it's mainly attention tokens. You have Believe, which is technically attention tokens as well, versus utility. And you list a few of the utility launchpads like MetaDAO. We know they're doing the ownership coins. Down here you listed a few others as well. I see Heaven Dex launch on Soar is another one we're excited for. Maybe tell us who you think wins in the terms of launch pads. Is it going to be those utility launch pads or more of those attention launch pads? And just give me your general thoughts on ICM.
Yeah, sure. I would say like there's a very thin line between utility or non-utility tokens. For example, like how do you define utility? If it's used as a payment token, then you define utility, or if that token gives you certain rights. For example, MetaDAO, a way of defining utility is about ownership. That if you own the token, you also own the company, and there's no separate equity and token value. And I think like that's really important, because if you have a separate equity value and a token value, then like the things are not aligned, and then you're just treating your token holders as just yet another exit liquidity. And I think like that's what like Believe did wrong here, that they separated out the token value and the equity value. And a lot of people came to launch token on Believe, farmed it, earned fees, and then like they went away because their entire equity value was different and the revenue was also accruing differently. But I would say Believe this did one thing very good, was that it ignited that entire narrative, and it kind of showed everyone that okay, like it's possible that someone can come and launch a token, earn fees, bootstrap attention, and then build from there. So I think like Believe was a really good start, but of course that wasn't a good way to do it. And I think MetaDAO does this like pretty well on like the ownership part of it, that you are actually owning the company. But on the utility part, I think most of the crypto people want utility in the form of buybacks, or it's used as a payment token in your interface and so on. And that's where I think I would say the problem also arises, that if you are expecting a lot of token integrations everywhere, it also ends up ruining the product experience. For example, a lot of these people demand that whenever you access the interface, you would be paying certain tokens to access the interface. That acts as a friction token, for example. A user should be able to pay in any tokens and not just like their own token. So I would say that kinds of ends up creating a friction. You can enforce it your own token if you have that leverage power, but if you don't have that leverage power, I would say on the interface itself there shouldn't be a token integration. Otherwise, like, you end up killing your product's flywheel. So yeah, that's my view on the utility part. On the general state of the ICM, I would say a lot of like new launch pads are also coming. For example, Jupiter is also launching their DTF, so I'm also pretty excited about that. Then Pump is also entering the ICM race, and I think like everyone saw the Spotlight Twitter account. So that's also something which is which would be pretty crazy, because Pump has a huge war chest of $1.52 billion, and there's a higher chance that they end up buying tokens from Foundation and so on, because they have been buying like a lot of ecosystem tokens previously as well, and they have an incentive to buy more tokens in the ICM era, just because they want to win the ICM race. And one interesting thing which is that, like, even if you go to pump.fund, all out of the top 20 coins, I would say 5 6 are ICM coins, or ICM coins as in project tokens. So I would say ICM tokens are nothing but project tokens which don't have a VC backing. So that's my definition of ICM tokens. So Pump still has like majority of the volume or revenues coming from ICM tokens. And I would say currently the top five tokens, one of the top five tokens is actually x402 token on Pump. So Pump definitely has an incentive to also enter the ICM race officially. Unofficially, it has always been the number one launchpad on Solana for even for ICM tokens. Believe and everyone is nothing in front of Pump, even for ICM, I would say. But now they can officially enter the race, buy back some tokens of ICM projects, and kind of catalyze that narrative and establish Pump as one of the ICM projects as well. But I would say the biggest problem is that a lot of people have launched tokens on Pump, but they always make mistakes of not acquiring tokens properly, or not having any fees previously, and so on. So I think like if those problems are rectified from the Pump team, or like if there's a way for builders to bootstrap capital, not just attention via Pump, then I think like Pump can be one of the biggest launchpad for ICM. It has been historically, but it can continue the lead for being the biggest ICM launchpad. But I would say in general, if I have to choose like one of my favorite launchpads, and it would definitely be MetaDAO, just because they kind of aggregated the whole token and the equity value, which is very important if you really want investor protection, as well as projects able to bootstrap capital and attention effectively.
So one question that I had was just around. I found it very interesting that you mentioned integrating the token into your product oftentimes kills the user experience, and I have a take about token gating. It's just when you token gate certain services, it kind of just creates this unnecessary friction for users.
Correct.
I mean, so I guess the better question is, do we wait for? Is there a different way to do that? Do we maybe just, is there an integration or another solution that we look for? Like how do you feel like ICM kind of gets over that hump of token integration? Because I feel like in some ways it does shoot itself in the foot.
I think that's here. Like, I would say, I would like MetaDAO in general. For example, I don't agree. Like, I don't like MetaDAO's pre-sale mechanism, because I think pre-sales are kind of uh, way to not to say extract capital, but like everyone has an incentive to just, yeah, like it's kind of a whales game, like pre-sales, where whales ape into the thing, and whenever they get like whenever the tokens gets listed, they starts to dump, or they will dump eventually. So I would say but Metadao has done one thing pretty well, that is aggregating the token and the ownership rights. And what it enables is that as a builder, I don't have a pressure to prove that, okay, this token is integrated into our products, or this token is ours, and so on, or we are giving sufficient attention to token. And this I can speak as being kind of a ICM founder myself, because people will always ask you that, okay, like when is your token getting integrated in that? For example, when we were having like Solana Agent Kit as our flagship product, that time everyone was, how can we integrate? Like, how when will you integrate token into Solana Agent Kit? But technically it isn't even possible because it's completely a open source toolkit and you can't integrate token in a open source toolkit. So I think that sets up like wrong expectations for any investors or any degens as well who wants tokens to be integrated in every part of the thing. So I would say in general, it's all about that you are officially saying that, okay, this is the token for your entire thing, and there won't be any other equity value for that. I would say like that's like a good way to do it. And it's also up to the markets to understand that that's the thing. And tokens are kind of like equity where you're getting rights to the company. And even in like traditional equity, there's no that equity integration in products. Like, have you ever heard that you basically pay, like you buy a Tesla car using Tesla equity? So I would say like that's not possible, and that's not even fair to be done in crypto. But of course, like you can use like token in your product pretty well. And I would say Deepin is a very good example where you get tokens for bootstrapping the supply part of it. So it's all about how do you use token effectively, but it's going to force upon. Like if you think like token can catalyze your product, then you should definitely add. For example, for something like Solana as a blockchain, Sol as a token is really great because if Sol keeps rising, it creates a positive effect for the whole ecosystem. DeFi TVL increases a lot, validator revenue increases a lot. Everyone who has a Sol has a higher net worth and so on. So I would say that has a huge network effects. So it's all about how do you integrate tokens effectively. That if the token goes up, your product also sees a huge uptick. Then I think like it's a very good or smart way of token integration. But just for the sake of integration, or just because 10 random people are telling you that your token should be integrated, you shouldn't force token integration because it would end up killing your project or protocol or product. And I would say like I've seen like a lot of different cases where people have actually killed a product just because of forced token integrations.
Got it. There was also another thing that you mentioned. You talked about how, creating a way for teams to not only bootstrap attention, but bootstrap capital that will kind of help them to kind of kickstart their building journey. And you mentioned that if Pump Fund could do something like that, they could kind of solidify their place at the top. I wanted to ask you about incubators because I feel like incubators actually play a really key role in this area of kind of not only bootstrapping attention, but also capital and community. So I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on incubators. Have you looked at incubators at all? What do you feel like is their role? And if that even if that even helps. Oh yeah, you mentioned it in your thread there.
Yeah, definitely. I would say ICM.run is a very good example of incubator. I would say, of course, like I'm involved with ICM.run, but the way they have built a community is like really amazing. That I would say they're one of the first players in the Solana ecosystem who has ended up uniting all the launchpads. For example, in ICM community, there are launchpads like MetaDAO, Pump, Believe, and so on. So I would say it's like, and obviously Meteora, which is like kind of, I would say, SaaS for launchpads. So in general, they have been really good at aggregating all the launchpads, and that's the reason like they have a good mindshare in the ICM narrative as well. That if you want to launch a token, you would want to get your project incubated. And in general, I would say incubation is very important for any ICM project because as a first time founder, as a first time people who is looking to launch tokens, everyone makes a lot of mistake. And during the Solana AI hackathon, I saw this firsthand where every project in the hackathon was launching tokens, and they used to make this mistake where they used to directly launch on Pump.fun, get get sniped, but they just used to hold just 1 or 2%, or even like less than 5%, and there was a higher chance that it was like heavily pressurized by some random cabal or group of degens. So all these people used to fall in all these bad advices, and then we saw the whole Meteora, Kelshare scam, and so on. That where all these like projects used to work with like shady market makers who used to snipe all the tokens and then dump directly on the first hour of launch. So I would say in general, every ICM builder needs like good advice here, particularly from people who already launched tokens or who have been ecosystem for some long. So I think ICM as an incubator kinds of helps to solve that, where there are like a lot of different mentors who would be helping these projects on what they can do best and what not to do best. And then it's also about projects to listen to these advices, because if they kind of end up doing the same mistake which others have done previously, I think like then it kind of spoils the whole purpose. So it's all about like I would say building a good environment where we incubate good projects in the ICM narrative. And it's not about like just like incubating fewer projects, but how can we educate the whole space as a whole. And I would say we would do a lot of work there. Personally, I would also kind of build up a website where you can discover all the ICM tokens and see like what they are solving for or the founder docs and so on. So I would say in general, there's a very huge gap in the ecosystem for solving the research and rating part of ISM space. For example, in traditional equity, there are a lot of research firms or independent research firms which publishes research on all this equity and also gives rating to them. For example, there's a S&P rating and so on. So I would say someone should end up building a good research firm, just focus on ISM space and also like rate these ICM projects that okay, there's a project with $30 million token. How do you rate it? Like, is the founder docs? How they are transparent? Is there any proper value accrual happening, or is the equity and the token value same or not? And what's the incentive structure? How's the liquidity structured, and so on. So there are a lot of different factors you can rate them. And I think like if there's a good rating, it also makes it very easy for DGens to do the research and also educate them about the project and if they're entering a scam or not. Because in this space, there's so many like I would say shady alpha callers who just like gives wrong advices to their followers just to do the pump and dump. That like yeah, accessing information is something very difficult, and there's so many different sources of information that becomes pretty much noisy. So I think like that is what even AIs or LLMs would solve in the near future, where you just ask an AI or LLM about a particular ICM project and they are able to tell it pretty well. But I would say the immediate solution can also be the proper research and rating of this ICM projects. And I think like that's a gap which anyone can solve and also build a business out of it.
So Yash, I'd love to get your take here, because we love MetaDAO on the show as well. We just had Profit on last week, Avicii, Umbro, the whole squad, and I think they've really cracked the code here at finding an interesting model. What I've noticed is it's very Web3 people tend to understand. The Web2 people don't understand giving full ownership rights to a holder. In your opinion, what is the final answer? Do you think something like a SOAR, a Street Foundation, a Segway? Do you think something that gives equity to holders is going to be what wins, or do you think something more like MetaDAO, or just in general, what do you think ends up winning this whole flight to utility, flight to equity, flight to ownership?
Yeah, I would say it's all about first proving a very good successful case study to all people that okay, like this is a good way to launch stuff. And I would say currently we shouldn't even focus much on Web2 projects. We just focus on crypto projects. And a lot of there are good crypto projects who currently like don't want to go through the VC funding route where they have to spend 3 months like negotiating with VCs only to get rejected with 99 of them, and then one of them funds and like it's not funds at a very good rate, or they ends up taking like 20-30%. So and then you have to go via the whole Binance listings or the sex listings route and negotiate with sexes, give like 5-10% of your supply and so on. So I would say there's a huge opportunity right now in crypto itself where you educate people that okay, like ICM is also one way you can explore. It also comes with its own cons. For example, if you don't have a well developed product, for example, we also had that you have a random bunch of DJs who keep asking update every day, and as a company you don't expect someone to give update every day. That's the reason like stock markets have a update every quarter. They don't give update every day. So I would say in general it's all also like setting the right expectations for investors or all this retail people in the whole ICM markets. If we are able to do that, then we would eventually end up attracting Web2 companies who would be launching tokens directly here for the like the my entire vision here is that any mom and pop store should also be able to launch tokens on Solana. That they are able to launch a token and then they are also able to accept. Like, for example, there's a coffee shop which ends up tokenizing on Solana, and it doesn't trade at a very high price, but something like 400k, 500k market cap. They are able to earn like $1-2k each month just from creator fees, and then they can also reward whatever people are coming in their own tokens itself. And let's say if someone likes their coffee and they want to invest in, they can just scan the QR and just ape that token. So I would say that that's a future like which we all aspire for, that everyone should be able to tokenize things. And in general, agents make it very exciting because agents in general would like to have their own token if they are being independent economic actors. So they should be able to bootstrap also from the whole internet capital markets. And it's also just about creating the right launchpad for that. I would say there won't be a launchpad which fits for everything, but there would be launchpad for specific segments, and then there would be generic launchpad like Pump, where you could just like launch tokens pretty easily and get all the liquidity and the attention benefits. So I would say there would be a lot of iteration, and there's a high chance that after 2 or 3 years, none of the current launchpads actually end up ICO serving the ICM market, but there's some random Web2 players which comes and builds a whole ICM launchpad from grounds up. Or someone like even Nasdaq or NYSE gets interested and they launch another ICM launchpad where they're listing all the smaller projects pretty fast. And I think like that's pretty much possible because they want to enter the tokenization narrative. Yeah, and they would definitely do something sooner or later and in this space.
There's a few things there I want to touch on. Firstly, it sounded like you said basically you don't think any of the current launch pads are going to be the long-term winners, number one. And number two, you don't think that there's one size shoe fits all. So someone may launch on Pump Fund, but that, another person would be better off launching on MetaDAO depending on the project, right? Is that what I'm getting?
Correct. Yeah, I think everyone would be selecting as per the preferences. And in the last few weeks, there's a lot of projects which are reaching out to me asking like what's the best launchpad for them. And I would say it completely depends on what they're looking. If they're looking to bootstrap more on the capital side, for example, they want to raise $2-3 million, $4 million, then something like MetaDAO is definitely good for them. But if the main thing is not bootstrapping capital, but more on the attention part, then I would say even Pump is a good launchpad. So it completely depends. And if someone is already established project and they just want to launch it pretty well, then something like Metaplex Genesis also is a good choice because they in general have a very high quality curation of projects, like which has already raised VC money and so on. So then Metaplex Genesis also work for them. So I would say there's a different launchpad for each specific purpose. And if you're a creator, then you would want to go for the creator specific launchpad. So I would say in general, it's all depends on like what type of preferences you have, and if the launchpad suits your preferences, then you should just like go ahead with that launchpad. But at the end, it's all about like how do you create value there. Like if you don't create value, your token will always be valueless. So it's all about creating that value, and then your token would be worth something.
So I
And I
want
would
to
say
talk
like,
about
yeah, go on.
I want to talk about Pump Fun for a second here because they're getting into ICM, and you see all these people, like we said, MetaDAO, Street, so on and so forth, competing to add some sort of utility to these tokens. Where Pump Fun traditionally has had solely attention tokens. It's of my opinion that Pump Fun can kind of just sit back and let everyone else figure it out, and then continue to do their own thing rather than having to go and innovate on that forefront. Do you think Pump Fund's best move is just sitting back and letting everyone else figure it out, or do you think Pump Fund should start to try to innovate on the equity side or the ownership side?
I think they should definitely try to innovate. Of course, like I think in general, Pump Fund doesn't need to make any efforts. To be honest, they have so much cash in the bank account, and yeah, they can just like sit back and relax. To be honest, and still, Pump Fund is like kind of top five revenue generating apps in all of crypto, and they're generating $2-3 million comfortably every single day.
Yeah.
So I would say in general, they don't need to make an effort to win the market or anything, but I would say as a company, or if they have a longer term vision, they have this important responsibility that they kind of set the tone of tokens right, and also involves like spending a lot of capital to just make sure that it happens well, that you create a whole legal ownership framework, and then like enable anyone to launch pretty easily via that. That you just like need to pass a very small KYB check, and then you get like listed on their, let's say, ICM launchpad and so on. And even if it involves like creating a separate ICM launchpad as pump, I would definitely go for it because in general, like you want to become Nasdaq, like Nasdaq for crypto, or basically a better Nasdaq and so on, and not just like another meme coin launchpad. So I'd say meme coin launchpads are pretty well. It has the good revenues, but you would also want to end up like like watch the narrative, and even if it requires, let's say, launching a separate brand under Pump Fund so that like it gets a clear narrative of ICM, I would definitely do that because as pump, I definitely have more than $1 billion in my bank accounts that I can spend in like doing all this, figuring out all the legal frameworks, give incentives to all the teams, giving out right grants. For example, if I give like very good grants to a big company which has raised a lot of VC money, or not even launch a big VC money, but they have been running profitably to launch token on pump, and then enable, just make sure that the equity and token value is same, then I would end up doing that, because longer term it would help pump like cater a much bigger market. So I would say like, yeah, here the entire total market is the capital markets. You can end up tapping, and why wouldn't you like to be $100 billion company rather than just a $4 billion company? So as pump, definitely they are incentivized to enter this race and kind of win this race, and not just be like, okay, like we are already the number one, and let's just sit back and relax and enjoy the cash in the account. So yeah.
I think I agree with you too. I think there is value in Pump kind of differentiating their meme coin decentralized launchpad from their ICM utility focused launchpad, and I do think there's a lot of value there, and they got a lot of money and resources to put towards it to kind of solidify themselves. You mentioned something 2 thoughts back. You said we have to set these expectations, right? Stock markets do quarterly reports. The degens here, they want to hear something everyday development, like you mentioned. How do we get to that spot in ICM where we set those expectations where people are more patient? Does it take just holders getting rewarded and sellers getting burnt? Like how does that happen?
I wouldn't say like anyone should put any capital controls in the token part of it, because and yeah, like in general, historically we have seen that any economy which puts capital control kinds of ends up failing. So there should be free markets in general, and that also involves for token, that you need to ensure that tokens are freely tradable, and you don't put like a lot of capital controls that, okay, like if you stake, then only like you can get certain things and so on. Of course, like it kinds of helps to arrest some of the supply and also on, that you can have supply control and all that thing, but that doesn't help much. So I would say it's also all about like telling your investor base that to be patient. So I would say in general, crypto investors or crypto retail people, and that's what they are called, degens, they're not patient enough. Like right now everyone looks to flip coins every particular hour, and sometimes even minutes and so on. So I would say there needs to be a good set of investors which comes into this whole ICM thing, who are much more patient. And right now, those are institutional investors. For example, in MetaDAO itself, like Paradigm and all of those VCs started investing after all the retail came in. So I think like that was pretty interesting, where VCs are coming at a higher valuation of $180 million, $200 million, and becoming that patient capital holders, because institutions won't look to flip every 1 or 2 hours if they announce publicly. Otherwise, it would look bad upon them. So I would say that's like one way to do it, that kind of attract like more and more liquid funds. And I would say in general, we need good liquid funds who are able to bid those tokens, because they are typically more longer term investors, or someone like more like passive investors. So I would say we need more liquid funds, and then we need like good whales who understand this market well. They develop that expertise, and kind of start a formally a liquid fund, or just like a publicly available fund where you can also track what they are buying, what they're selling, and so on. And that's what like happens in traditional equity market as well, that all these institutions have equity in their balance sheet, and people can see in real time what they're buying and what they're selling. So I would say we need more Warren Buffetts in crypto or internet capital markets, who are here to hold longer term. And if we increase the holding term just from the psychological point of view, I think we would end up winning this. So I think like there shouldn't be something like, okay, like if you sell the token, we enforce some fees that you would end up paying more fees based on whatever whole time you're holding and so on. So I think like all this gamification is good for uh, good for doing interesting or exciting experiments, but it's not good for a longer term thing. In longer term, I think investor psychology needs to be changed. They need to be educated well, and they should also see that value, that if I hold a token for 1 year, I would get that returns. But right now, I think most of the investors think that when should I dump this token? So everyone has this expectations that I need to get out of this token as soon as possible. So I think like that's like a wrong mindset, and like everyone is here is like kind of to be blamed for that. But I think in longer term, if you are able to change the investor perspective, then we would end up getting much more patient capital in the whole ICM space.
I think that's really interesting what you said, because if you think back to Ethereum, that's kind of what the holder base expected on Ethereum, right? You expected this kind of this longer this higher time frame hold time. It's not, we're not just holding for 30 seconds, or we're not here to flip every couple of minutes, going to a different token. The holder base expected to hold for a longer time and be patient enough to see the outcome, right? So it's my belief that that holder base, that demographic that you describe, is out there somewhere. They just don't know what to buy right now. On chain, there hasn't really, I mean, I still feel as though, and you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I still feel as though, from an outside perspective looking in, Solana is still just viewed as the casino, despite them, pushing ICM, despite pump fund pivoting to ICM, despite ICM just being this sector that continues to grow. When I talk to everyone outside of our niche, outside of Solana, I'm like, wow, you guys actually have zero visibility on all of this stuff. I mean, do you see, in your interactions that, there's just this gap in understanding between the people that actively participate in this versus, people that are just active elsewhere?
Yeah, definitely. I would say it completely depends on, for example, there are different ways to for a degen to like get the information from. If they get in some alpha group chats or some degen chats, there's a higher chance that they would have a very low holding time because they themselves haven't researched that they develop a conviction over a particular token. And I've seen people who discover like all these tokens from alpha chats flip in just like 4 or 5 hours or 6 hours and so on. And same that if they are getting shelled by their favorite KOLs or alpha callers and all of that. And generally, all these alpha callers or anyone who sells token has a very low quality because any high quality KOL or any high quality people won't keep selling tickers just because of the reputational part of it. So I would say that automatically creates a gap in the market, or it's like kind of an adverse selection where only low quality people or alpha callers would end up calling the tickers. And then there's like some high quality alpha callers as well, and those become like popular people like Ansem and so on. But I would say in general, the quality of callers is pretty low, who just like wants to do pump and dump. And then there's like another way to discover source or build conviction on token. That is that you end up doing research themselves. For example, I was talking to one random degen yesterday, and he's some farmer in Italy who is who's selling olive oils and so on. So I would say, like he kind of ended up doing a research on a token and accumulated 5% supply over the last 1 or 2 months. And he had this conviction that the team will do well. And I would say he just like told me yesterday that his entire bag is already up more than 4x. So that's a very good way to do about it. That you just research upon the team, talk to the team, and see what they're working on. And if you develop that conviction, then buy that token. So I would say it's all about like how does people discover information. If it's via a low quality alpha shiller or someone who just wants to shill tickers for the sake of doing that, then you would get like all this like impatient capital who doesn't have that conviction, and they would end up selling in few hours or days because they just wanted to make some quick money out of it. But if you have developed a conviction and you have researched long enough, then you would also want to hold longer enough because you have put in some efforts. I would say in general, more and more efforts these investors put to develop that conviction, higher it would be the long holding time. And that's why research reports and good quality ratings of these ICM projects are very important. Otherwise, we would end up having a bunch of people who just want to flip capital. That is also one of the reasons why ETH had a very high holding term, because most of the ETH holders were people who genuinely believed in ETH as an ecosystem and also ETH as a concept. So I would say, and that's the reason like Bitcoin, ETH, and all the like high quality tokens had high quality longer term holders because they genuinely believed in the tech. They got nerd out and so on. So I would say it's all about having building that conviction that you hold long enough.
And Yash, obviously we try to do this on this show right here. We try to get that dense information, talk to the founders, build that conviction. My question to you: does deep research and conviction, can it outweigh poor market conditions? Because we've seen these poor market conditions, it almost seems like even the best of the best things have a ceiling. Maybe tell me your thoughts there.
Uh, can you repeat the question again? I didn't get that.
Yeah. So you talk about research and conviction and how important research and conviction is to long-term holding, to basically riding a token up. Um, the question is, does enough research and conviction outweigh poor market conditions? Because the market conditions recently have been so poor that it feels like everything kind of has a ceiling, even if it's incredibly good. Do you think we can ever break out of that, or how do we break out of that?
Yeah, I would say definitely market conditions are something that no one can control. So let's say if someone has done a very good research and but they're supporting a project or a team which doesn't have a narrative or which doesn't know how to get an attention, their token won't pump. It's as simple as that. So I would say research and conviction is as good as like as you can predict that it will get the attention and the narrative. So and that's why I always say that the whole game is of attention arbitrage, that you have to buy when you think that it has a low attention and you have to sell when you think has a higher attention. So you have to always predict what would have an attention uh after a few weeks or whatever like your trading horizon is. And that completely depends on two major factors. One is that if that narrative or theme will get hot or not. For example, if there's a good AI team, then I would predict that whether the AI meta would get hotter or not over the next few weeks or months. And then it's also the ability of team. Some teams are really good at getting attention, and that attention can come from anywhere. It can come from high quality people. It can even come from low quality people. Or some teams are like very good in cabals and all these groups and so on. So they can pay to these cabals and cabals and then get that attention. So it's all about like if a team is very high quality, then they would be able to get attention from high quality people. If the team is scammy enough, or if they are like very much in trenches, they would be able to get attention from all the degens and cabals. So either way works, but I think a team should also be talented enough to get attention. If you know that these two things can happen, then you should definitely bet on that thing, because there's a higher chance that their tokens go up because they have the narrative tailwind, as well as the team is good enough to get attention out of that narrative. So I would say definitely everything has a ceiling for market conditions, but also depends on how you bet, or basically what type of things you bet on. And yeah, like we can't break that ceiling. It's all about markets to decide. So I would say, and no one should try to optimize on that as well. It's all as a market players. We need to just play that game well, but we can't change markets. We can definitely like have a change the microstructure of markets, but we can't change the nature of markets. It is what it is.
Yash, there's a ton we could talk about. I want to talk about sexes and perp dex meta, but we're pushing an hour here. We got to run, and I want to respect your time as well. So we're going to start to wrap up here. I want you to tell us, because we really didn't even get into much, SendAI here. We talked a lot about your thoughts, which were fascinating. But tell us a bit about SendAI, what we can look forward to from you, from your end, from SendAI. Let's just hear some more there.
Yeah, definitely. So in general, like AI is something which is really exciting as a tech. Like we have every day with everyone uses Chat GPT. So like our entire thesis that what AI can solve in crypto and what crypto can solve for AI. So right now, what we believe or what we are solving for is what AI can solve for crypto, and that involves like let's say AI is essentially helping you to take trades and so on. And there can be like long list of things, but I would say in general, crypto is all about trading right now, and AI can definitely solve some problems for people. So immediately, that's what we are building for. That how can we build that tooling layer where we enable AI to trade for you or help you trade and so on. So that's the shorter term vision. But on the longer term vision, our entire thing is what crypto can solve for AI, and that comes with like if every agent would like to have a wallet just because they would want to pay for things or trade for on your behalf, or even like launch a token and bootstrap capital and so on. And the second would be the verifiability part, and that can come from either the privacy aspect, that okay, like we are making LLMs private, and here cryptography plays a very important role. And then another is verifiability part, that blockchains in general are kind of verifiable ledger. You can verify from soul scan that whether a transaction has happened or not just by putting a hash. So I would say verifiability is also a very important aspect of it. And crypto in general is a very good economic coordination mechanism. For example, Bitcoin ended up coordinating with so many people that this is a better form of money. And DeepIn is also about that you are coordinating capital among different people. So I would say crypto is really great at bootstrapping capital and coordinating lot of independent actors together. So that would say happen with agents as well. How do we coordinate agents together? I would say blockchains would be a very critical aspect of it. So that would be like kind of our another long term vision. So in shorter term, we want to solve for what AI can solve in crypto, but the longer term vision would be what crypto can solve for AI. And both of them is a progressive thing. Right now, there's no market for what crypto can solve for AI, because if I go to an AI lab, no one would be eager to listen what we can offer to them or what crypto can offer to them, because for them they have a much bigger problem to solve, that is the intelligence or the scalability of LLMs. So they are currently very much focused on how they can make LLMs better. But after a certain time, that would start hitting the ceiling, and then they would need crypto, or like all the fundamental principles of crypto would can be applied in AI. So in shorter term, we are solving for that. We kind of started as a building the Solana agent kit, which is an open source toolkit and still used by a lot of people. We still get more than 5K downloads each month, and that repo has more than 600 stars and so on. But our right now, from the last few months, like we have been intentionally very silent on a lot of things, but we have been building like a agentic protocol, and it's like you can also envision that as a network, and we'll be revealing probably in the next few months. We are not in a hurry because there was a lot of things that needs to be solved for that network. There's a lot of like more individual components, and yeah, that's what we are excited to reveal to the market in the next few months. And we are here intentionally being patient here, because over the last 1 year we realized what are the gaps in the market and what are things which works, which doesn't work. And since we have already built open source toolkit called Solana Agent Kit, and we have seen so many agents getting built on top of that. We know what are the needs for other developers, and also what does users need, like what are things which traders would want to automate via agents and so on. So that's what we are currently focused on. And the network would be initially focused on all the trading use cases, but longer term we want to be the default agentic network, or where or you can think of it as a Solana for agents sort of thing, where we are building building a chain or a network just specifically designed for network. So that would be our longer term vision, and that's what we have been building for the last few months. And can't share much about the network right now, because in general it's a very complex thing, and like yeah, we are still building it out. So, but once we are ready, we would be happy to share with the rest of the world. And I would say like yeah, it would definitely be one of the biggest launches in the Solana ecosystem.
Ooh, now that's what we like to hear. Well, when you're ready to launch that, come to us. We'll get you back on the show, give you a proper rollout here. You might not be able to say this here, but the guy asked a question. He said, "Can you ask about the upcoming projects of the Send ecosystem and any news about Send?" I think you kind of just covered some of the news, what you're working on. Can you talk on any of the upcoming projects, or is that not something you're able to do?
Yeah, on the project side or the product side, as I mentioned, like we have been focusing on that particular protocol or the network, and that would be our immediate focus, or basically and we are currently like highly focused on that as a unit. On the token side, we would have some updates pretty soon. So yeah, we are making some strategic decisions there, and just like thinking from a longer term, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So yeah, can't speak much because there are some pending decisions on that side, and some things are from the legal side as well. So that's why like we need to just like cross all of that, and then we can give some updates on the token part of the thing. But yeah, from the product point of view, it has been going well, and we have been building this protocol for the longer term.
Sweet. Last thing, how can we get invested or involved if we're interested?
uh yeah,
Viewers, and us.
Yeah, in general, I would say like just keep following us. Yeah, our Twitter is currently suspended. But in general, like you can follow us and you can keep following us. And particularly in X402, definitely, we would have like some really exciting updates and some things to share, because we have been involved in X402 from a long time, so we know what works, what doesn't work, and we would be definitely excited to make X402 a thing and contribute as much as we can to the open source, because we have been in general very much huge believers in open source. And like in general, I don't sell any token or anything, so I would like to abstain from that. Just because, as I mentioned, that if once you start selling tokens, you become a low quality
Fair
KOL
enough.
and all of that. So yeah, in general, I restrain from selling even my token, to be honest. If investors want and if investors see value, they would obviously buy, irrespective of I telling them to buy or not. So yeah, it's all up to investors on whatever they have. But in general, I would say, yeah, we have pretty good things coming up, and let's see how it goes.
Sweet. There's a lot there, Yash. We appreciate you coming on. Hopefully, we didn't take too long today, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, Anya. It was really fun chat.
Sweet. We'll have to get you back on soon.